Hi guys, in this chapter we're looking at linear equations, and this is all to work out an unknown value. Um, and I guess you might be familiar with BODMAS, and BODMAS is the order of operations where you're going to put things together to work out what the total is or groups of. But the idea of linear equations, we're actually doing the opposite, and we're going to take things away to work out what's left over. So with BODMAS, I guess that's one way. And if we're going to do the complete opposite of that, I want you to really think about SAMDOB. And that's something that's probably not commonly known, but just in terms of logic, if you know how to go left, hopefully you should know how to go right. Kind of like when you're going to school, you should know how to get back home. So SAMDOB is the opposite to BODMAS, and we're going to utilize this to solve linear equations following that process. So here we have a series of questions to solve these pronumerals, and pronumerals is a letter or a symbol that represent an unknown value. And hopefully through these series of questions, it gives you a better understanding of what we're trying to achieve, and also an example of what you should do when you do your homework, when you do some questions that have been set. You can always revert back to this video, pause, rewind, play it over again as many times as you can, as you want to or you need to help you understand what's going on. So let's start off with the first one, 6 minus x equals 4. And if I asked you what is the value of x, for something simple as this, you would know that the missing number is 2, because 6 minus 2 equals 4, and that holds true. So that in itself, doesn't require much, but with the other ones, it gets a little bit more complicated. There's a few more steps involved, and I don't want you to be wasting your time with trial and error and just, picking a number, trying it and then realizing, oh, it doesn't work, picking another number. I don't want you to be wasting your time on that. So here we have 2y minus 3 equals 7, and we do want to know what y is equal to. We've got two numbers here, a minus 3 and a 2, that we do want to make disappear to have y by itself. But we can't just magically, just erase them and then all of a sudden that's it. There is a step and a procedure to follow, and SAMDOB is going to help us. So with SAMDOB, subtraction or addition is going to be the first step. And in this case, the minus 3 is going to be our first step. The 2 is going to be our second step. And to get rid of a negative 3, we're going to we're going to add 3, okay? Because they cancel each other out. And because we're dealing with an equation, we want to balance both sides. So you can't just add 3 on the left and do nothing on the right, because then you're just, I guess, making things up and you're making some modifications without balancing both sides. So we need to add 3 to both sides. What that looks like in the end, 2y is equal to 7 plus 3 is equal to 10. Okay, so we've eliminated the negative 3 on the left by adding 3. We need to balance the other side and do exactly the same thing. So now we're left with 2y equals 10. The second step is to get rid of the 2, okay? And to get rid of the 2, you'd want to do the opposite to how it is currently attached. So the relationship between 2 and y is multiplied. So the opposite of that is going to be division. So we need to divide both sides by 2, and your answer is going to be 5. And if you think about it, if 2 yo-yos equals $5, if 2 yo-yos equal $10, then 1 yo-yo is going to equal 5. You automatically have divided it in your head, but I want you to understand the process is the opposite to how it's currently presented. And as we do the others, it will kind of become more familiar of what you need to be doing, and you get into the habit of this routine of SAMDOB. Okay, so now we've got minus 3 equals minus 6x minus 8. And the first number we need to get rid of is the minus 8. So this is, let me try a different color. So this is our first number, and the minus 6 is going to be our second number. Now, they are both negatives, and so you might be thinking, well, do I add 6 instead of adding 8? And I want you to pay careful attention to the relationship with the negative 6 to the x. And those two parts are multiplied with each other, whereas the minus 8 is a constant, it's on its own, and therefore we need to deal with the minus 8 first before we can get to this value here. Okay, so to get rid of minus 8, we're going to add 8. And because we're adding 8 on one side, we need to do the same thing to the other. So add 8 on this side. And so what we're left with is minus 6x is equal to, now positive 8 minus 3 is 5. Okay, so now we're left with minus 6x equals 5. And to get rid of the minus 6, remember it's attached to the x through multiplication. The opposite of multiplication is division. So let's divide both sides, not by just 6, but we want to divide it by minus 6. Okay, please do not leave out that negative symbol. It's crucial that you keep it with attached to everything that you do, because they catch you out and then you end up getting a completely different answer. Now, based on previous chapters, I want you to revise and make sure you know how to convert from fractions to decimals if the question requires you to do so, because that is important. In this case, I'm going to leave it as a fraction for simplistic purposes, but I do want you to remember that you might be required to convert from one part to another. Okay, so here we have x on its own, and 5 divided by minus 6 is simply minus 5 over 6. Okay, a positive number divided by a negative number gives you a negative value. So we have a negative fraction to end with. All right, so next question, we got x over 4 plus 1 equals 3. So now we're dealing with fractions within the linear equation, and we do have two numbers. We've got the 4 at the bottom, we've got the 1 over here. Our goal is to get x on its own, and the question is, which one do we do first? So remember, revert back to SAMDOB, and in this case we want to get rid of the 1 because that's your subtraction or addition. So to get rid of 1, we want to, let me just re-emphasize that this is your first step and the 4 is your second step. So to get rid of the 1, we want to take 1 from both sides. Okay, I always recommend rewriting the question so you know where you are up to. 3 minus 1 is equal to 2. Okay, now x over 4 is a fraction, and the 4 is the denominator of the fraction. And what we've already understood from our previous chapters, that it is division. So x is being divided by 4. And to get rid of that 4, we want to do the opposite. Okay, so the opposite of division is multiplication. So we want to now multiply both sides by 4. And what we end up with is 2 times 4 is 8. So our final answer, the value of x in this question, is 8. Moving on to our second last question here, we got 5x plus 1 over 3 equals 2. And yes, we are looking at SAMDOB, and it is a common mistake where you go, oh, there's a plus up on the top, plus 1. So that is the thing that we need to get rid of first. And this is where it comes to, I guess, attention to detail. And my rule of thumb is if you want to go upstairs in a 2-story house, you need to start downstairs. Okay. And so downstairs being the 3 is going to be your first step. We can't travel upstairs here on this fraction before we dealt with the 3 at the bottom, because the entire of 5x plus 1 is divided by 3. Your second step will be the 1. And then notice that we have a third value, which is a 5. We're going to get rid of that last. Okay. Alrighty. So I might write it on the side here. We're running a little bit out of space. So 5 over x minus 3 over 4. So I'll just get rid of this. 5, oops. So 5 over x equals minus 3 over 4. And we've got this thing here. Okay, back to this question. So first step to get rid of the 3 at the bottom. Just like the previous question, because it's the denominator and it's divided, to get rid of it, we want to multiply. So let's multiply both sides by 3. And what we have is then 5x plus 1 is equal to 6, because 2 times 3 is equal to 6. Okay. Now we got 5x plus 1 equals 6. Everything, we've dealt with the denominator. We don't have to deal with fractions anymore. We can actually now revert to the 1. And to get rid of the 1, we want to subtract 1 from both sides. We're left with 5x is equal to 5. And then our third step is to get rid of the 5. And the relationship of the 5 with the x is multiplied, and the opposite of multiplication is division. So to get rid of the 5, we want to divide both sides by 5. And what 5 divided by 5 is 1. And 5x divided by 5 is just x. So our solution for x is 1. Okay. Our last equation here, we have 5 over x is equal to minus 3 over 4. And we got 2 fractions, okay? And I don't want you to get too overwhelmed by this or anything. Like you've dealt with fractions before. And so the process here isn't any different, okay? It's just making sure you know what to do first and what to do next. Now, the simplest step from here is to actually deal with the denominators, okay? And what we want to do is we want to multiply this side by 4. We want to multiply this by x, okay? And what you'll end up getting is 4 times 5 is 20, and then minus 3 times x is minus 3x. Okay, so just like with the previous 2 questions, we want to get rid of the denominator by multiplying both sides. And so in this case here, to move this x to the top, we want to multiply x to both sides. To get rid of the denominator here, the 4, we want to multiply 4 by both sides. And so we'll do that simultaneously. So we multiply this side by x and this side by 4. And we've got 20 is equal to minus 3x. Just to make it very, very simple. Lastly, we want to get rid of the minus 3. Okay, and to get rid of that minus 3, we want to divide by minus 3 because it is multiplied to the x. Okay, and balancing both sides, we want to do the same thing to this side. Okay, so 20 divided by minus 3 gives you minus 20 over 3. Now, if the question asks you in different forms, let's say in a mixed number, you would say minus 6 and 2/3. Okay, if you want it in a decimal form, then you'll go minus 6.67, say rounding off to 2 decimal places. So I want you to revise over how you convert fractions to decimals and how you would round off decimals and how you would annotate recurring decimals. Those have been covered in previous chapters. I definitely recommend you spend time familiarizing yourselves on that because it is an important part to this whole process. Next video, I will show you how to apply all of this knowledge with linear equations using brackets. Okay, thanks guys. See you in the next video.